Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is condemning the Liberals' major foreign policy shift. That is the decision of the Carney Liberals to recognize a Palestinian state very shortly without peace talks or a rejection of terror. They argue that it rewards violence, not peace. Palestinians deserve to live free of Hamas and other terrorist groups where the people can build their lives and raise their families living peacefully next to the Jewish state. That is the two-state solution Conservatives support. Prime Minister Mark Carney made the announcement last night, saying he thinks the prospect of a two-state solution has weakened.
Regrettably, this approach is no longer tenable. Prospects for a two-state solution have been steadily and gravely eroded, including by the pervasive threat of Hamas terrorism to Israel and its people.
For more on Canada's decision, I'm joined by Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Rob Oliphant. Mr. Oliphant, good day to you.
Good day to you.
The Prime Minister laid out three conditions yesterday under which Canada would recognize Palestinian statehood. So Canada's made the decision to make this conditional, but it's not on actually fulfilling those caveats. It's on the commitment to do so. Why not wait until they've at least done one of them?
I think this is the art of diplomacy. What this is Canada recognizing that we have a long based pattern where we have talked about a two-state solution. We've reached a position where it is now an untenable situation, obviously caused by Hamas and continued by the humanitarian crisis given the war waged by Israel. And right now we're looking for a way to get out of that. And so we add our voice to a diplomatic chorus to say we believe that an important step right now is the recognition of the state of Palestine to give hope, to inspire and to incentivize both sides to lay down arms, to have hostages released, and to begin that process towards two viable states living side by side.
But your government chose to make this conditional. One of those conditions, for instance, is that they have democratic reforms and elections. They haven't managed to do that in 19 and a half years. What gives us the confidence that them saying they will means it'll actually happen?
Well, we have been working with the Palestinian Authority on this, and we have said there's no room for Hamas in this. You're right, it's been 19 years since we've had elections. They've had elections, and we don't expect elections to happen right away. Let's face it, there's utter destruction in Gaza. Utter destruction. There's violence in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. And so we recognize that you can't impose those right away. However, with the intentions, with building blocks, with $10 million of Canadian money going into helping governance in the Palestinian Authority, we believe that those things can happen. And that will bring about peace for both Israel and Palestinians, and that they can work this out. Do I think there's a magic wand? No. Do I think that Canada has the power to create something by itself? No. But we can work with other countries, with allies, like-mindeds, to make sure that we are moving the ball along. Otherwise, the destruction will continue. There is no military solution in this situation. There's only a diplomatic solution. So Canada's diplomatic voice is being added today. And I'm very proud of Mr. Carney, the Prime Minister, for doing this. I think it's the right thing to do.
I do want to ask about one more of those conditions, and it's that the Palestinian state that we would then recognize would be demilitarized. Well, the Palestinian Authority and Hamas basically hate one another. The Palestinian Authority has almost no influence in Gaza, where Hamas does have weapons and influence. It won the last elections handily. What is there to say that demilitarization is possible when Hamas is not the party that we're dealing with?
Well, Hamas needs to be squeezed out. That is the first thing. And we will work with the Palestinian Authority on that and with others on that. There is no place for Hamas in a future Palestinian state. It's a terrorist organization. Palestinians have been bombarded by Hamas and now are being bombarded by Israel. That needs to stop on both sides. What we will continue to work for is a new way of being in that part of the world. The terrorists have to have their weapons taken away. If they don't lay them down, they need to be taken away. Canada will work with partners around the world to ensure that we have a demilitarized situation. This is not new. We have had this problem with other countries in the world before, where we have to find a way to demilitarize something. Is it perfect? Is it easy? No. But these are baby steps towards a diplomatic solution to a humanitarian crisis that Canadians have said enough is enough.
The Conservatives have argued this rewards Hamas for its murderous October 7th attack. The Conservatives not alone in saying that. How do you counter the way in which it might look to some?
There's no reward in this for Hamas, and there's no punishment in this for Israel. What this is finding a way for two people to live side by side. So I don't celebrate this. What I will celebrate is when peace breaks out, and when we have a diplomatic solution, and when we have two states that are able to work side by side, recognizing their future interests are bound together. And we have to have a safety and security for Israelis, safety and security for Palestinians in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, and safety and security and a rebuilt country in Gaza. That is what we need to have happen.
Can I just briefly ask you, just on the timing of this, the recognition by the Prime Minister, that announcement has come 2 days before the trade deadline with the Americans. And the President found out about it and said it's going to be hard to get a trade deal with them. Why not just wait a few days?
Canada is negotiating the trade deal with the United States in good faith. We will work until we get the best deal for Canada and Canadians. And trade should not be used as any sort of a weapon. We don't weaponize trade. We're in good faith negotiations to protect Canadian jobs, the Canadian economy, Canadian identity. We will do that. And we expect both parties in this negotiation to do the same. That is what we're doing, and we'll continue to negotiate till we get the best deal for Canada and Canadians. And this is not about foreign policy. This is about a trade deal, and we'll continue to be there in good faith. That's what Canadians expect.
Rob Oliphant, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.
Let's turn now to the official opposition and Michael Chong, who's the Conservative critic for Foreign Affairs. Mr. Chong, good to have you on the program. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You've said that recognizing Palestinian statehood rewards Hamas for its murderous October 7th attack. How much time would have to pass from that attack for statehood to be palatable to you?
Well, first, let me say that every civilian life, whether it's Palestinian or Israeli, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, or otherwise, is precious. And that means humanitarian aid needs to flow into Gaza. But now is not the time to recognize a Palestinian state, because recognizing a Palestinian state is not the way to achieve the delivery of humanitarian aid into Gaza. And secondly, and more importantly, recognizing a Palestinian state in the aftermath of the October 7th terrorist attack sends the wrong message that violence and terror are an effective way for a group to obtain its political objectives. So the time to recognize a two-state solution, to recognize a Palestinian state, is as part of a negotiated settlement between Israelis and Palestinians. In other words, Israelis and Palestinians come together, they negotiate a settlement that results in peace in the region, and that settlement has the popular support of both Israelis and Palestinians. And neither one of those conditions are in place. And I'll just finish by saying this, David, that it is sloppy logic to think that just because Canada and a couple of other countries have declared and recognized two states, that will achieve a solution to this longstanding conflict. That logic is sloppy and incoherent.
I would just point out it's not a couple of other countries. You're right that Britain and France have done so in the last week, but there are 147 nations that did so before us.
Agreed, but I would say that the vast majority of Western democracies have not recognized a Palestinian state. And when I refer to a couple of other countries, I'm referring to France, the United Kingdom, considering the recognition of this state. There are about 190 member states of the United Nations. The vast majority of them are not Western liberal democracies. They are in other categories of states. Many of them are authoritarian states and non-democracies. There are only several dozen Western democracies. And of those Western democracies, the vast majority have yet to recognize a Palestinian state because they understand that we cannot give in to force and violence as a way to achieve political objectives. Authoritarian states are happy to do that, but Western democracies have long stood on the principle of negotiated settlement in the region. And the Carney government, alongside the UK, would be dangerously going down the path of caving in to force and violence as a way to achieve political objectives.
You've spoken about that you see statehood recognition should only happen in an instance of negotiation between the two parties. Now, part of the challenge, of course, is Hamas has not even recognized Israel's right to exist, and so doesn't have an interest in negotiating a solution with it. But at the same time, there are members of the Israeli government right now who want to push Palestinians out of their own land. There are some who have called for the complete annexation of the West Bank, to take away the land that Palestinians live on. There are settlers that are doing that. The Netanyahu government talks about a two-state solution, but takes very little action, if any, to actually see that happen. Why should Canada wait for Israel? Why should Canada wait for Hamas before recognizing nationhood of the Palestinian people?
Well, look, Israel is a democracy, the only democracy in the Middle East. And to be clear, Israel is not a perfect democracy. No democracy is, Canada included. And so we don't agree with some of the actions that the state of Israel has taken in the West Bank and other places. But that said, that is an entirely different issue than the issue of the recognition of a Palestinian state by the government of Canada. We have to work alongside both Palestinians and Israelis to nudge them toward sitting down at the same table and to negotiate a settlement, like was done several decades ago in Norway. We need to do the same thing now. Recognizing a Palestinian state now sends a very dangerous message. It says to groups like Hamas, you don't actually need to sit down and negotiate anything. In the future, you can use force and violence to achieve and obtain your political objectives.
What would be?
And I think it's a danger.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Chong, but what would be a nudge? Because the Prime Minister has described this as a nudge to get at least the Israelis towards the table and talking about a two-state solution. What would be a nudge were this a Conservative government, for instance?
Well, we should be using all the tools available. First of all, we don't have a lot of resources and assets in the region. And so as a result, we don't have a lot of assets to bring to bear to put pressure on both parties to sit down at the table. But at the end of the day, just because the post-October 7th attacks makes a negotiated two-state solution look even further away than ever, doesn't mean we shouldn't be working toward that end. We need to keep focused on what will achieve long-standing peace and security in the region. And a unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state by Canada and a handful of other countries is not going to get us at that end result. Why would Hamas or any other group in the future ever decide to negotiate with the Israelis to achieve a peaceful settlement? Because clearly that's not the way. If the Carney government goes ahead, if the UK government goes ahead, it's clearly not the way to get their political objective. Clearly, force and violence is the way to achieve that if Western democracies start going down the path of recognizing a Palestinian state.
Michael Chong, certainly appreciate your time and thoughts today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
It's Michael Chong, who is the Conservative critic for Foreign Affairs.